Chapter 9. The comparison between Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. Quote, Mahayana is superior to Hinayana Buddhism, unquote. Daisho Sotai, the second level of the fivefold comparison. Nichiren Daishonin established the principle of the fivefold comparison as a means to judge the correctness and superiority of a religion. It is expounded in the Gosho, quote, the opening of the eyes, unquote, Kaimoku Sho. The first level of the fivefold comparison compares Buddhist and non-Buddhist teachings. In that comparison, the superiority of Buddhism over the teachings of other religions is discussed and verified. However, within the realm of Buddhism itself, the teachings can be further broken down and critically compared to strive at the most superior teaching. The second level of the fivefold comparison is between Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. Mahayana means, quote, great vehicle, unquote, and Hinayana means, quote, lesser vehicle. A great vehicle is like a large ship that can carry many people over the ocean. A lesser vehicle is like a little boat that can carry only a few people across a river. The word vehicle is used to describe the Buddhist teachings, since the ultimate purpose of the teachings is to carry people from the shore of this impure world to the other shore of enlightenment. Conflict between Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism. After Shakyamuni's passing, the Buddhist order split into two groups: the Theravada school, which literally interpreted Shakyamuni's teachings and the doctrines and strictly followed traditions, and the Mahasamgika school, which tried to understand the true meaning of the words to reveal their true spirit. These two groups eventually divided into 20 schools. In the process of shifting from Shakyamuni's fundamental Buddhism to sectarian Buddhism, the Theravada school and its branches started to adopt non-Buddhist teachings. Seeing this, the people from the Mahasamgika school reconsidered their position on non-Buddhist teachings adopted by earlier schools and voluntarily went back to fundamental Buddhism. The Mahasamgika school was the forerunner of the Mahayana movement. Gradually, Mahayana Buddhists differentiated themselves from the earlier schools of Theravada, calling them Hinayana. The Daishonin discusses this in his Gosho, quote, the teaching, capacity, time, and country. The references to the teachings of the Eigan Sutras as Hinayana comes from the various Mahayana sutras, such as the Hodo, Anya, Lotus, and Nirvana Sutras, Gosho, page 270. After the Mahayana movement started to grow, the majority of the Mahasamgika schools became part of Mahayana Buddhism. Thus, Mahayana Buddhism, which arose from the conflicts between the Theravada school and the Mahasamgika school, actually comprised both teachings. In other words, Mahayana Buddhism was not newly formed with new elements, but rather the Theravada school and its branches decided to reconsider their non-Buddhist views and sought to restore the original spirit of Buddhism. Furthermore, if the differing views on Buddhism are classified into orthodox and unorthodox, based on their evolution from the fundamental Buddhism of Shakyamuni to Mahayana Buddhism, it becomes clear that the Mahasamgika school was the orthodox school and the Theravada school was unorthodox. Also, Mahayana Buddhism, which emerged to unite the orthodox and unorthodox views at a higher level, was widely practiced for the enlightenment of all humanity, transmitting the fundamental spirit of Shakyamuni's Buddhism. The teachings of Mahayana and Hinayana. Hinayana means lesser vehicle. Vehicle, we know, means different life conditions. It was taught for people in the two vehicles of learning and realization. Hinayana teaches personal enlightenment and emancipation. There is no goal of leading others to enlightenment. According to Tiantai, Hinayana Buddhism is based on the Tripitaka, teaching of the sutras, rules of behavior or discipline, Vinaya, and commentaries taught by Shakyamuni during the 12-year Aegon period. In the Tripitaka teaching, quote, sutras, unquote, refers to the 4 Aegon sutras, Shi Aegon Kyo. Quote, rules of behavior, unquote, refer to the 4-fold rules of discipline, Shibun Ritsu. The great canon of monastic rules, Makasogi Ritsu, and the 5-fold rules and disciplines, Gobun Ritsu. Quote, commentaries, unquote, refer to the, quote, Hanzoku Sutra, unquote. The, quote, treatise on the source of wisdom, unquote, Hochi-ron, unquote, and the, quote, great commentary on the Abhidharma, unquote, Abhibhasharan. The 3 sects that were established in Japan based on the Hinayana teachings are the Kusha school based on Vasubandhu's, quote, treasury of analysis of the law, unquote, Kusha-ron, the Jojitsu school based on Harivarman's, quote, treatise on the establishment of the truth, unquote, Jojitsu-ron, and the Ritsu school, based on the Vinya Ritsu. Mahayana is originally a Sanskrit word meaning a great or superior vehicle. It is the teaching for bodhisattvas who lead all people to enlightenment. It is the teaching for saving oneself and others, leading them to attain enlightenment. The Hinayana teachings are based on seeking for only personal emancipation. Mahayana Buddhism is ultimately divided into 2 parts, true Mahayana and provisional Mahayana, as taught in the 5-fold comparison delineated by the Daishonin. The differences between Mahayana and Hinayana. The Hinayana teachings are also called the teachings for the state of learning, and the Mahayana teachings are called the teachings for bodhisattvas. In Hinayana Buddhism, the practitioners revere Shakyamuni as the Buddha and follow his teachings. However, they can never attain Buddhahood. They can elevate themselves as far as the state of Arhat, the highest of the 4 stages that people of learning aim to achieve. Furthermore, Hinayana teachings are self-centered because practitioners are preoccupied solely with achieving perfection of the self and personal emancipation. Mahayana Buddhism, however, teaches that because all sentient beings possess the Buddha nature, anyone can attain Buddhahood if the practitioner is determined and practices the 6 paramitas. Even if one does not achieve it in this lifetime, one will certainly be able to attain Buddhahood in one's next life. Thus, Mahayana Buddhism is a teaching for oneself and others, which aims for the salvation of humanity and leads the whole society in an optimum direction. Mahayana is superior to Hinayana Buddhism. This is the 2nd level of the 5-fold comparison set forth by the Daishonin. The Daishonin taught the comparison between Mahayana and Hinayana, discussing 1. The superiority of the Mahayana sutras over the Tripitaka sutras of Hinayana. 2. The superiority of the Mahayana sects over the Hinayana sects, such as the Kusha sect. 3. The superiority of every teaching at each level of the 5-fold comparison from the perspective of Mahayana, the greater vehicle, which will save more people. The first and second points are a general comparison between Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. On the third point, the passage that states, quote, all teachings other than 1 chapter and 2 halves of the true Buddhism are Hinayana in nature and heretical, unquote, Gosho page 655, serves as an example. This passage, which teaches the principle of the 5-fold view of revelation, can be found in, quote, the true object of worship, unquote, Kanji no Honzen Sho. There are only a few Gosho passages that refer generally to the second level of the fivefold comparison. There are three possible reasons for this. 1. Bodhisattvas Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu had already established the superiority of Mahayana Buddhism during the transition period from Hinayana to Mahayana in India. 2. Tentai and Dengyo followed these earlier arguments, and they too made clear the superiority of Mahayana Buddhism over Hinayana in China and Japan. 3. During the Daishonen's time, provisional teachings such as the Nembutsu, Pure Land, Shingon, True Word, and Zen sects were prospering. Even though some of their members supported the teachings of precepts, their views did not strictly follow the traditional Hinayana of the Theravada school, but rather followed a combination of Mahayana and Hinayana concepts. Therefore, the Daishonin did not have to focus on comparing Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism from a doctrinal perspective. At any rate, no matter how much one learns through Hinayana practice and its philosophy of impurity, impermanence, and achieving a state of perfect selflessness, one can obtain no more than individual tranquility of mind. Through practicing these teachings, one can never obtain the strong spiritual vitality to overcome all suffering and develop true happiness throughout the three existences of past, present, and future, together with others. Also, Hinayana Buddhism does not encompass the philosophy of Mahayana, which would be able to guide a complex society like we have today and is able to lead all people to enlightenment. The teachings and practice of Hinayana Buddhism are simply not sufficient to bring forth prosperity, peace, and happiness to the people in the world of our time. Today, we live in the time of Mappu, when we propagate the Daishonin's Buddhism, the ultimate Mahayana teaching. Thus, we should help people to stop blindly following the Hinayana teachings of Shakyamuni and teach them the Daishonin's Buddhism of sowing to lead them on the way of true happiness.